Hello guys, welcome to the first part of the series of What If Issei also had a persona, and if you like the video please like and subscribe the channel now. Without wasting any time, let's start the video. Summary: after rehabilitation, there is still recovery. The Phantom Thieves of Hearts may be finished at Shujin Academy, but how did they get involved in the affairs of Kuo Academy? Chapter 1. I do not own the Persona series or High School DxD. Everything belongs to their respected owners. Akira Kurusu, 3rd year, high school. Ryuji Sakamoto, 3rd year, high school. Anne Takamaki, 3rd year, high school. Yusuke Kitagawa, 3rd year, high school. Makoto Nijima, 1st year, college. Futaba Sakura, 1st year, high school. Haru Okumura, 1st year, college. Sauna Shitori, or Sona Citri, the student council president of Kuo Academy, read these names and kept her eyes firmly on the papers of their profiles. Those students were definitely an odd bunch. Only coming in from past a couple months ago, some of them left their own impressions while others not so much. Yet still, the bunch of them were well known in the school for their own unique styles and personalities. It was odd, considering that most of them came from Tokyo. Even more peculiar, all of them were friends. The two that attended the college section of the academy would also meet up with the high schoolers many times. Sona managed to get their profiles thanks to connections she had in the higher education area. Akira Kurusu was just average, appearance-wise at least. His black hair was wavy and a pair of dark gray eyes complemented the color. The boy was pretty much seen always with his Kuo uniform on neat and properly. There was also a pair of glasses on the male's face, although it was not needed for visual correction, apparently due to health exams proving to do so when the boy managed to read every letter on the eye chart. It was hard to pinpoint the boy's personality, but to her own opinion, Sona thought that the boy was quiet and well-mannered. Not only that, but his marks were high enough to make him be considered one of the smarter students of the academy. When she pulled him into her club room once to talk to him about his impressive grades, he simply replied that he studied hard. That was not the only issue though, as there were a few people commenting that they could hear the sounds of a cat coming from his bag. He would also never seem to stand out too much, always preferring to not mingle in the crowds but make sure that he looked like he was a part of it at the same time to not make him seem strange. There was also another reason why she had to pull him in for some talks. Ryuji Sakamoto was one of the strangest boys Sona would ever lay eyes on at Kuo Academy. Well, that's not a whole lot considering how not many of the students were male to begin with. The male who was currently on her mind had short spiky blonde hair and brown eyes. Despite wearing the school uniform, Ryuji would seem to wear some sort of glaring yellow t-shirt underneath the open blazer. Such a bright piece of clothing even had the nerve to sport a comic-style star symbol with the word or letters to her belief, since the following was something she refused to believe to be in a dictionary. OMG. Not only that, but the pants the boy decided to use with the uniform used suspenders. The blonde didn't even bother hooking them over his shoulder though, allowing the bands to just hang from his hips. From the start, Sona thought that Ryuji was going to be a problem student. As time progressed, she was correct. But her guess was only partially right. Being called in for doing a poor job in his physical education classes, the blonde actually revealed that he suffered a crippling injury from his previous school that was almost never allowing him to play any sort of sports again. Sona immediately took note of the limping thanks to that fact as Ryuji was excused back to his classes. The blonde still proved to be a bit of trouble to the other teachers. It was odd though that Ryuji would admit that it would be his fault most of the time and try to work harder. Despite having to scold the boy for his misbehavior, another female would already beat Sona to the punch. Anne Takamaki was her name. The girl had bright blue eyes and ash blonde wavy hair styled in bush pigtails, with parted side bangs on the right side of her face. She mainly wore a white varsity-like hoodie that was large enough to cover the school's skirt, which that small article of clothing was the only thing Kuo Academy related that she wore. To cover the bottom though, she had red tights and brown boots with yellow laces. The girl was almost as bad as Ryuji, but luckily she kept herself in check all the time. Her studies were fairly good, always asking questions just in case that she didn't know anything. While lively and energetic though, she comes to some cases to spout profanity. One of the most memorable examples being her catching the perverted trio peeping while Ryuji pointed this out to her. Angry words that included piece of shit, bullshit, hell, and son of a bitch were only examples that echoed through the school property as a massive chase began with the angry girl chasing down the peeping toms. Yusuke Kitagawa was the next one. The boy's appearance was rather plain like Akira's, but was much more dignified somehow. His hair was dark blue with parted bangs slightly covering his left eye. He wore the school uniform, but the blazer was nowhere to be seen, meaning that the long white-sleeved shirt was all he wore to cover up the upper half of his body. Interesting enough, he would always be seen carrying several silver keys that hung along his belt. As a cool, calm, and collected being, Yusuke proved to be extremely elegant to the point that many of the girls dubbed him the Great Painter of Kuo Academy. As ridiculous as the long name was, although there was already the Prince of Kuo Academy, Yusuke certainly lived up to his nickname. Being elegant with his work when it came down to painting or drawing, which was the boy's passion, he saw an attractiveness, beauty and aesthetic in mostly everything. When such a statement was made, many of the girls swooned over his words, such sentences even providing motivation for the students to work harder. Interestingly enough, the boy took up kendo where he proved to be well trained with a sword. Turning her head, Sona took a small break from looking over the students and recollecting her memories of the reputations that each of them held. So far, those were all the second years that she had dealt with. But when she looked out the window, she saw the kendo club chasing the perverted trio once more. But there was one other person that seemed to be more bloodthirsty than the rest despite the rather opposite looks. She must have had a meeting with someone on the list before witnessing the chasing. Makoto Nijima certainly had a strong personality with a look that did not match it almost. Makoto had brown hair in a bob cut with blunts bangs and a braided headband. Her eye color was a surprising red, although others claimed it to be a reddish-brown. She wore the school uniform without the standard shirt, vest, and cape. Instead, she wore a black halter vest over a long-sleeve white shirt with a turtleneck. Covering her legs were black tights while she wore brown ankle boots underneath. The girl held a strong sense of responsibility, a good strength when beginning a first year of college to Sona's opinion, seeming to be like a perfectionist. Sona was almost tempted to invite the girl into her peerage, but it was nearly full and she wanted to use the rest of her pieces wisely. Nevertheless, Sona was tempted. The girl was like an older sister to almost all students that were younger than her, almost becoming an official great lady of Kuo Academy herself. Makoto was a very compassionate and understanding young lady. Yet, she was extremely brutal as she would hunt down the perverted trio every time their misdeeds would be brought up to her ears. Despite such a violent element, there was one person who seemed to tease her a lot. Futaba Sakura was an odd case. The girl was a bespectacled female with long bright orange hair. She wore large black circular glasses, and she always was seen wearing a pair of big headphones. She was rather short compared to most girls, only being 5 to 6 inches taller than the dubbed school mascot. Futaba was troublesome though by a bit, seeming to refuse to wear any of the uniform. After about a week of arguing and saying that she would be kicked out of school if she did not wear even a piece of it, the orange-haired girl finally settled for wearing the cape, and that was about it. For the rest of her clothing, it consisted of multiple layers. She wore an off-shoulder white top with a red blood-like pattern on her chest with 5 white asterisks, a black tank top underneath, a dark green jacket with a faux fur trimmed hood, black short shorts, black thigh-highs and black knee-high boots. She even wore a giant green jacket with the abbreviation AFK on the back. The girl seemed to be a bit shy, preferring not to really be seen in public by hiding behind her friends. Without them around, Futaba sometimes even resorted to wearing masks. Thankfully, in due time, she slowly began to reveal her face into the open gradually. That led to a slight problem though, as it simply led people to flock all over her due to her just being adorable. However, Futaba would always find a way to slip past the group surrounding her somehow and be able to get back together with her friends that were the previous members that Sona was going over. Speaking of friends, Haru Okumura. Where did Sona hear that name before? Ah, right, Okumura Foods Incorporated. It was interesting, the girl didn't look or act like a rich person at all. The girl had chin-length curly light auburn hair and brown eyes. She wore Kuo Academy's school uniform with heavy modifications, a pink turtlenecked cardigan with short puffed sleeves with a long-sleeved white shirt underneath. The cardigan was zipped open up to her navel, and had 2 big pockets on the front. With the Academy's skirt on, she finished up with white tights with black flower patterns and black Mary Janes. A daughter of a rich company. The girl didn't act spoiled. Haru never acted spoiled at all. In fact, she almost like a big sister as well, more of an emotional type. If Makoto was all about the physical aid, Haru was all about psychology. Many times the students were troubled when it came down to different issues. Somehow, Haru would always be the one that everyone would talk to rather than the school counselor. That fact was mentioned many times. Sona herself pointed this out when she ran into the girl in the halls when the opportunity would rise. Haru simply said that it is much more comfortable to talk to someone near your age than far. Finished with her reviewing, Sona placed the profile pictures down and rubbed her eyes after taking her glasses off. There was a feeling that she had about them and it slightly irked her that she couldn't get rid of it. She had pulled out their files in hope of maybe being able to make out or find a detail or more that could explain why she had a bit of a suspicion towards those students. Just what made her think that there was more to those 7 than meets the eye. Take a break. Anne, please let me look over your notes. Did you forget to write them down again? No way. You reap what you sow. I did write them down. Really? Well, not very good notes. Ryuji and Anne continued having their conversation, or bickering, while Akira and Yusuke were waiting for the others. The blue-haired boy looked up to the sky, appreciating the scenery that was above their heads. The clouds were so free, just like how some hearts should be. Raising his hands, he raised his fingers and thumbs to make it seem like he was looking at a frame. The limbs were still, as if Yusuke were doing his best to memorize the picture he was forming for later. Akira was texting on the other hand. Having a small conversation with Futaba, Makoto, and Haru, he managed to get everyone's attention. The others said that they are going to be late. Futaba's going to some sort of sweet shop with someone named Kaneko. Makoto and Haru are both staying behind to work on homework in the school library. Aw man, really, Ryuji sighed, bending his back and neck. We were all going to go out to that Italian place near our apartment as well. I do believe that we can still go out to eat however. Yusuke commented, craning his head back down to join in the conversation. True. Anne nodded in agreement, taking note of Yusuke's words. We're just going to have to arrive there later than usual. Yeah, it's true. A voice suddenly came from Akira's bag. Looking down, the boy reached over to the zipper of his man purse and opened it up. The head of a cat suddenly popped out as the entire body of the pet soon followed. Its black coat covered the body while it had a white muzzle as well as paws with a yellow collar. But you've got to remember that we made reservations. Oh damn it, that's right. Anne suddenly remembered, eyes widening with realization. There was the 5 o'clock booking that we all made. She looked at everyone. What should we do? Ryuji, Kitagawa-kun, Kurusu-kun, Morgana-chan. All of them thought about it for a few minutes. After a small while, Akira raised his hand to suggest what he had on his mind. We could always try to see if we can change the times of our reservations. If we are unable to do that, what sort of other places are there to eat that we all may agree on? There's a ramen place close by. Ryuji raised his own hand enthusiastically. The noodles are similar to having Italian so it could work out. But what about the factor of the broth? Plus, I do not think such pasta is supposed to be salty. Yusuke pointed out, earning an agreement from a deflated blonde. Come on, guys, there has to be another way. Morgana paced around the pavement as everyone was deep in thought of what to do. All except Anne though. The female was just watching all of the males doing their best to come up with a best-case scenario. You know, you guys are taking this way too seriously. She deadpanned as the boys were still thinking. All of the guys were too busy in their moment to even realize that Anne had just talked to them. How about this? Akira started off. We'll make dinner. Pasta is going to be the main course, but how are we going to season it? I say with curry. You just want to put your cooking skills that you learned from Sojiro-san to the test again. Morgana sighed, shaking his head. But still, that's not a bad idea. There aren't any other places that could be worth seeing due to them being too far. Pasta and curry. That doesn't seem to be a bad combination at all. Ryuji nodded his head, already thinking about the food and how it would taste. It should provide something to be very amusing. Yusuke commented. I can't believe you guys are still acting like this. Anne sighed. Take a break. Of course the only thing we didn't have was coconut cream. Akira said this to himself as he was practically running back to the apartment where all of them lived. Of course, the boys lived separately from the girls so that no incidents would happen. It was a rather nice place to live as well. Luckily, there was tons of money they had made from raiding the palaces they would invade in order to change their target's heart. So they could afford everything for the moment. Haru offered to use some of her own savings to be able to help them survive, but everyone downright refused and said that they would get their own part-time jobs to be able to support one another. But getting back to running back, Akira had the groceries in a shopping bag that Morgana was riding in at the same time. Man, it's been a long time since you've actually done any cooking of your own. The cat commented as the two of them continued down the road. The black-haired boy only nodded in response as he continued dashing through the city. He wanted to save his breath for running all the way back home. The curry was almost ready, as the coconut cream was the last ingredient they needed before they could mix everything together. Not only that, dinner time was ticking closer. Running past a park, Morgana suddenly whipped his head around with shock. Wait, back up a bit. The cat exclaimed. Akira stopped running, turning his head towards the cat with a look that wanted to know what was up. Just back up already. Doing as he was told, the human took a few steps back for the cat. Sniffing deeply, Morgana's body tensed. What that's blood I smell. Surprised at the sudden yelling, Akira immediately began running into the park without a bit of hesitation. Most people would cautiously approach or even call the police. But this boy was more of an adventurous spirit. As they progressed through, the two of them began to notice a few things. First of all, no one was in this park. Not a single person, which was pretty ominous since there would always be someone around despite the current time of day. Second, something felt out of place. They couldn't place their finger or paw on it. Seeing something out of the corner of his eye, Akira was thankful for his experience in the palaces against shadows as he managed to react quick enough and dodge some sort of glowing red spear that was going right towards him. Rolling out of the way, he looked to where the projectile came from. Eyeing the fountain, which was in the middle of the park, Akira leaned back with a perplexed look at what he saw. Standing on the top level of the fountain was a woman. The woman was beautiful. No, seductive was more fitting. She had hip-length black hair, sharp violet eyes that fixed her look into an almost perpetual glare, a fair complexion, and a very large bust. Although, the feature that commanded the most attention were the two black wings sprouting out of her back. Oi! Morgana leapt out of the grocery bag and onto the ground. He knew that this girl wasn't human, so there was no point in hiding from them due to them most likely being from the supernatural world. Who are you and why did you just throw that thing at us? He hissed. A talking cat. The lady shook her head to get rid of the raised eyebrow on her face. It doesn't matter, does it? She smirked. You'll be dead anyways. After a cruel statement, she seemed to create another spear out of thin air. However, I'll tell you both as a final wish. She continued. My name is Rainier. Remember it well, as it will be the last name you'll ever know. Well, that's a strange name. Akira commented. Immediately, he rolled to the side again to avoid an incoming spear. He frowned to himself. He was ill-equipped for a situation like this at the moment. At least whenever he entered a palace, he and his team would have a firearm of sorts with a weapon of choice. But the odds were not in his favor at the moment as he was nothing but a normal human at the moment. But still, he managed to avoid each and every spear thrown at him like a professional. Looking over to Morgana, his eyes gestured over towards the woman who was relaxing and taking pleasure in attacking him. The cat nodded its head, understanding what his leader mean. Running around out of Rainier's vision as Akira continued to distract the female, the feline immediately charged the woman. With a powerful leap, the cat bit down on the lady's arm and refused to let go. Ow! Rainier exclaimed in pain, losing her balance and falling into the water of the fountain while having her head slam on the rim at the same time. Get off me, you stupid cat! Ripping Morgana off of her by grabbing his neck, she threw him across the pavement and into the bushes. Akira immediately ran past Rainier as the female aimed a spear for the cat. Scooping up Morgana, Akira managed to take cover behind a tree that was along the bushes. Panting a bit due to so much running around, his attention was grabbed again when he heard Morgana's voice. "Number. Way." Looking at the feline, the male looked down to where the cat was staring. The body was male, looked to be about average height, possessed brown hair and brown eyes that were frozen in a death stare. The boy was leaning against a tree, seeming to have his gaze fixed on who or what had killed him. The two of them knew this boy though, as the brunette sat next to him in class. His name was Issei Hyodo, the resident pervert. Akira and Issei didn't really know each other that well, but that didn't mean Akira wanted him to die. Especially like this. The boy in front of him didn't seem to stand a chance. "Did she really do this?" Morgana growled, baring his sharp teeth. "That's correct." Being kicked from behind, the two were knocked down and skidded right next to the corpse of Issei. "And you know what? You two will be next. Go ahead, beg for your survival. It's always amusing hearing you humans plead for your lives." Akira clenched his fist. He knew that running head-on would be suicide. No matter though, that woman had to be stopped. So nonchalant about killing him. He faced many, but none were killers like this lady. She performed such acts as if she enjoyed it. He didn't show or say it, but it disgusted him. He wanted to take her down. But Rainier proved to be far more stronger than he was alone. If he had a weapon, a gun, something to help him. "What are you going to do?" "Just sit and wait." Akira gasped when he heard a voice. Morgana and Rainier both looked at him. "What's wrong?" "Scared?" the woman taunted. "Are you going to let you and your friend die? You have faced threats even greater. Or, am I making a mistake?" Akira gritted his teeth, glaring at Rainier, who approached him slowly. Sweat began to pour down his brow. It was not from fear though. Morgana didn't know what was going on, but he knew that he had to at least buy the boy some time to come up with something. "Let our contract be brought up once more." He began to scream out in pain. His body entered violent spasms. Collapsing to the ground, his arms and legs shook as if he were a rag doll. As Morgana continued to try to distract Rainier, the cat looked around to see Akira clutching his head in agony. Rainier stomped on Morgana, causing the cat to be stunned after a blow like that. The woman then decided to kick the feline right next to Akira. Looking up towards the boy, she frowned. "What is wrong with you?" she asked. "I am thou, thou art I. For the justice you believe, let blasphemy fall upon those who don't." Akira began to clutch his head in agony, constantly banging his skull against the pavement. With every impact, he began to create a bigger hole with every hit. Before bringing the head back down, he would look up to the sky as if it were some sort of ritual. But no blood spurted out. "Call upon my name, and release thy rage." He then paused. Rainier created another spear just in case. Slowly getting up, Akira stared right at her. A white bird-shaped mask with a black design around the eyes covering the top half of his face. He reached up and felt it, and a surprised look was worn on his face. "A sacred gear user," Rainier snarled, already having her hands to throw the weapon. But then she stopped when Akira began to pull the mask off. "Even if you are dragged into hell, call upon my name and release thy rage." "No way," Morgana breathed, slowly getting back up. Pulling on the accessory, it felt like it was glued onto his face. Desperately, he attempted to pry the accessory off. Painfully, he felt like his was ripping his own skin apart. Struggling in pain, he lost his grip for a split second but regained it back. Blood began to pour out of the mask. But it was really his skin behind the accessory as he finally managed to tear it off to reveal his bloody upper face. Letting out a final cry, he went silent. Breathing heavily, Akira looked up to show that he was no longer wearing his glasses. Not only that, but he had yellow eyes with a cocky smirk soon turning into a massive grin as the blood on his face burst into blue flames. Slowly, the blood began to evaporate off his face and the flame covered his entire body. Morgana and Rainier were shocked to see this outcome. But Morgana was the first to recover. "Oh ho 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 ho, you're really screwed now," the cat commented, grinning like a madman if he could. After the human was covered with the blue fire, red flames that formed a face then appeared along the blue body. Floating upwards, it held the same manic look as Akira did. The clothing the boy now had was what he usually wore when he was a phantom thief. A black trench coat with a gray-collared shirt, black trousers, brown Cuban-heeled boots and a pair of red gloves. But that's not what stole the scene. What took it were the blue flames. Chains were connected to the floating entity as it continued to have its maddening grin. Slowly, the blue flames dispersed to reveal something large. It was twice the size of Akira. Wearing a red coat, the length of the clothing only made it up to the mid-back of the thing. A black mask with red designs made it seem like it had horns. Two gigantic black wings spread themselves out in a flourish and showy motion. Massive red boots with bladed heels were worn at the bottom to create a rather dignified yet dangerous look. Then, there was a white scarf and a tall top hat as two articles of clothing a gentleman would wear along with a massive vest with red strings. Black clawed fingers sprouted out from red fingerless gloves, ready to slice all those that stood in its path. Chains rattled and surrounded its body, as if the metal links were being bent to the will of the massive entity. It made her back away. It made her feel scared. It shocked her. Rainier breathed, doing her best to stay brave but was clearly putting in all the effort to not cower and stand still in awe. What is that? Akira and Morgana only grinned. Arson.